all of them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this. And onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
anyway for about a year or so, but we've got the broadcasting tools to bring this to you tonight, and we are very excited to be here around this iconic circuit with these iconic cars. What a time to be a sim racing and motorsport fan.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for the welcome. Very much echoing your sentiment there. Great place to go for a race, of course, Spa, but it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for us to get the first real look here at this brand new sim platform.
Absolutely, and we're just into qualifying at the moment, so we'll explain everything as we go along, but effectively the format for tonight is pretty simple. The qualifying session of 10 minutes in length with the drivers having the circuit to themselves is ongoing at the moment. That will set the grid for a 300-kilometre race, which, as I say, should take just over an hour and a half. There's your tower on the left-hand side. We've got three classes here with the hypercars, LMP2s and LMGT3s all going up against each other as well, and there's very much a consensus at the moment in GT3s. You can see in terms of what manufacturer everybody is going for, or what pair of manufacturers everybody seems to be choosing. We'll get into all of that though as we go along. On board we ride though with one of the Jota Porsches. This is Patrick Dane in the 38 car, and a great chance to look on board here at just how this sim handles, just how everybody's getting used to this, because people, as we were talking before we went on air here, have come from all kinds of different sims to give this a go.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously going to be a whole new model for us, cockpit cam, as well as obviously looking at the laser scan tracks as well. This is going to be very interesting. But what is obviously true to every other sim platform and the track, of course, is understeer in Malmedy.
Yes, that's not going to go away. Just down another gear and towards No Name Corner, which I'm still going with. Then towards Puon. You all know the layout of Spa. We've even got the real life, well, I don't know what they call this, but the sort of throttle and brake inputs and the gear selection and revs on the left-hand side as well. I've got to say, we've been having a little look at this before we came to air. It's a really nicely put together package actually for the graphics in terms of broadcasting and the way it's working. Effectively, this is going to look like a real WC race, just 4 times shorter.
Yes, indeed, yes. It does look very stylish, very enjoyable, and what I like is the fact that you're getting plenty of information on the screen, but you're not losing it with big block kind of shadow effects behind all the graphics. They seem to have slotted things in very nicely indeed. It looks like this over-the-shoulder cockpit cam now is somewhat interrupted by, I guess, the rear view mirror in the centre of the console. Very hard to actually see what the driver is looking at from this particular camera angle, but you do get a real sense of that claustrophobic pillar box effect of these cars.
I have noticed when watching onboards of drivers who are actually good at this game, unlike me, to do the driving, they sort of go with a sort of zoomed in cockpit camera, if you like, so they wouldn't actually be looking at their field of view from quite that far back. They decide to get a little bit closer, and that makes sense. You don't really need to see the steering wheel inputs yourself. You are doing them after all, and so you can zoom yourself in a little bit further, and it's the common problem in prototypes. You can't really see where you're going. There on the bottom right, you can see the classic qualifying timing thing ticking along as well. Matthew Cheverton here in one of the Alpines, looking to improve on his time, get over the Porsche. And it is worth noting that these manufacturers in Hypercar and GT3, they all have different characteristics, and it's very interesting to see how they set the cars up for that. The Alpine, I've noticed in my time on this game, are a little bit maybe better through this middle sector than they are on the straights, but that does somewhat depend on how you set the car up, how you get the aero going as well in this car.
Absolutely. No, I don't know if we're allowed to mention balance of performance or not, as in a simulated WEC event. But yes, absolutely. What I love is the fact that each manufacturer does have that different characteristic, that different feel, different centre of gravity. But certainly Matthew Cheverton seems to be on top of things. Purple first sector, green second sector, and stitching together this lap quite comfortably so far.
Yeah, maybe he has taken some wing out because it's the middle sector where he's lost a load of time compared to the first by the looks of things. Target time at 2:02.4 is effectively the pole time that Patrick Dane has currently got in the Jota Porsche. Down onto the brakes into the bus stop chicane then for the driver of the 36 Alpine. Into these curves. It's so awkward at slow speed, these hypercars. Really clunky, but that's what they're kind of like in real life, to be honest. They're pretty difficult. They're better at high speed. Out of the corner he goes. Is it enough? Not quite. 3/10 of a second or so, just under. 3/10 behind. It looks like we've got a decent race on between those two. Still 3.5 minutes to get these laps in, though, as we go back to Alistair Ramsey here, who's in second place in the GT3 category, where it is all BMW versus McLaren by the looks of it.
Yep, we're not going to get too confused between the manufacturers, despite the very colourful liveries, of course. BMW and McLaren seem to be the way to go, but no doubt we're going to have a fabulous competitive action, certainly at the start of this 300 kilometres. Of course, it'd be 300 kilometres for the hypercars. I doubt the GT3s are going to make it all the way to 300k.
No, they certainly won't. In qualifying, we're seeing them at the moment about 16 or so seconds behind the hypercars. So factor that in to your calculations for the race. Should mean they're lapped every 9 laps or so. And that will be where the real race is won and lost. Over the line for Ramsey. He's not going to improve with that lap time there. 1.5 seconds off the pace to go a bit slower than 1.3. And here's our first look at an LMP2. At the moment, William Stevenson is the closest challenger, and it is the closest session by the looks of things here as well in LMP2. A great lap so far. Coming in from Ethan Faulkner to get that pole position. Just 62 thousandths of a second off on the first sector from what that says, but it's also telling me that it's an outlap, so he's going to be hoping that there's enough time remaining here, William Stevenson, to maybe jump over Faulkner. You are noticing probably the fairly large gaps between these drivers. It's to be expected, really, considering this is such a new sim and everybody's still likely to getting used to it in varying degrees of experience, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, taking a nice wide line for the entry, perhaps sort of got a little bit more nose on the car into the second part of the bus stop than he would perhaps have hoped for to kickstart this final bid for a pole position. And let's see what he can do. Target time 2:05.663 by Faulkner right now.
Trying to keep the steering as straight as possible before Eau Rouge and trying to just flatten this out as much as possible. But the anti-cut can be quite severe over the top there at Radion, so got to be careful. It is noticeable in LMU how you lose a lot of time weaving around and putting in steering lock on the straights when you don't need to, so make sure you deal with that as we now get on the brakes here for Lecombe. Uphill braking zone, of course. You do want to get over these curves on the right and the left hand side. You can almost hook the car round there on the left before you just kiss that final curve a little bit more gently. He's going quicker as well in the first sector, purple so far.
It's a James Bond purple with a 007 improvement over the first sector, and it didn't seem to suffer a great deal of understeer through Malmedy, but I did notice quite gingerly as he went on the approach into Lecombe, not necessarily abusing track limits as we see perhaps on other platforms. It does seem like Le Mans Ultimate is a little more punishing and not allowing the drivers to transgress quite such an extent and widen the track.
I'll explain the off-track system in the gridding process, which will happen just after this qualifying session. But here is Stevenson through the middle sector, getting right up on the outside curve there after the chicane. Before Stavilo, bit missing the apex there, needs to widen out this corner as much as possible, get flat out. This is going to be very close. 15 thousandths of a second quicker through the middle sector on Ethan Faulkner, who'll be biting his fingernails if he's watching this at the moment. I'm not even sure if Stevenson's going to be allowed to finish his lap here or whether the session ends in these things when the timer ticks down to 0. We're about to find out, because he's not going to make it to the line when it goes to 0. So he better hope that this carries on for a couple more moments as the timer now does tick down. He will be allowed to complete his lap into the final chicane, looking for that good exit here. He looks like he was strong on the brakes as well. Can he do this? Can he get to pole? Here, William Stevenson over the line, and he's just about done it by 0.5 of a second.
Oh, that's exactly what we want to see is fingernail biting moments like that in qualifying. So congratulations to him. Matthew Cheverton then securing, that looks like third place in the hypercar, some 0.8 of a second away from the ultimate time to a 1.898 by Den in the Porsche. And then, of course, we're having just to track the final laps now. Adam Locke has got a personal best in the second sector, but is to some deficit 10.5 in the first sector. Let's see if he can progress. I think it's probably not quite on target to move forward, but he will open the gap into fourth place, it looks like, unless he's performed a miracle through here, Ewan.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would be a miracle, wouldn't it? 8 tenths behind going into that final sector, where really the only corners where you can make time is through the final chicane, and there you go, loses a bit more time, gets to over a second off of pole. He'll hope that he's quick enough to stay with Stevenson and Faulkner, who look like they're going to have a great race out front. There is Cheverton again. He's completed his lap time. I'm not sure when it shoves everybody on to the next session, but we have still got lap times coming in, and indeed drivers who haven't set times. James Smagersgill changed very late in the day to be a hypercar driver, and he's not got a time on the board yet. I wonder if that's because he hasn't tried or he's been off track.
Yeah, we haven't actually seen. I don't think we've seen a Chevy yet actually out there. So on our coverage, anyway, as one of the GT3 McLarens, then of Chris Humphries comes over the line, and he sets a personal best time, but unfortunately doesn't feature in the top 10.
There is Smagersgill into the garage. Not quite filled up to the brim this time around. I think we were counting earlier, we're around 20, I think, as far as entrances goes for this race. So let's have a look at that grid, with row 1 taken up by Patrick Den and Nigel Joblin. This is going quickly, isn't it? Goodness me. Matthew Cheverton and Nico Monroe are going to be on row 2. Alpine versus Cadillac on row 2, ahead of James Smagersgill, who didn't set a time, so he'd be further down. William Stevenson and Ethan Faulkner are going to have a great race, I think, in LMP2, all being well. Adam Locke and Rhys Tarrant will share row 4 overall. They'll be starting in just directly behind the hypercars, of course. Peter Shuttleworth and Luna Franks round out row 5. That Franks just the first driver outside of the top 5 in LMP2, followed by Sammy Joe Nakal in the McLaren and Alistair Ramsey, the front row of those in the GT3s. Jelmer Jekyll is alongside Peter Tong in an all McLaren row 7, followed by 15th place for Jaden Chu and Chris Humphries alongside him. Then after that, I think will come the drivers who haven't set representative times. Indeed, James Smagersgill will start from the very back of the field. Hopefully they won't make him start behind the GT3s, but I don't know whether that is going to happen or
That is
not.
certainly going to be a difficult first lap for Smagersgill if he does have to start at the very back and navigate Eau Rouge and Raidillon with much slower cars in front of him. Let's wait and see then what happens on the gridding format here.
Yeah, so they'll get a minute and a half to figure out what they're going to do to start this race and how they're going to get themselves onto the grid. You'd imagine starting with fuel and deciding what tyres to go for, soft, medium, hard, all available, of course. They've got 6 track limit points around here and fixed setups, so that's what they're dealing with here tonight. To explain those track limit points, effectively you get a decimal place for how much of a cut it is. If it's really bad, you'll get, obviously not decimals, you get a whole point. If it is not so bad, you'll get just decimals, but that is something to watch out for over the course of the race. Make sure you hold the brakes when you get smacked onto the grid, otherwise you'll roll down the hill to make their way down towards the final bus stop chicane. As you've noticed, we're on a short parade lap, so we'll be green flag racing before you know it here at the circuit to Spa-Francorchamps, and clearly some of the drivers weren't quite ready for it. The Cadillac there on the outside line wasn't quite ready. James Smagersgill doesn't seem to be with these hypercars. He is going to have a very busy start. That's going to be interesting. We'll just have a look at him a little bit later on after we've gotten these guys underway. It is the Spa 300 kilometres here, brought to you by Motorsport UK, Esports on Le Mans Ultimate. Through the final bus stop chicane they go, and you've got to wait for the green flag here. The race leader is not in control just yet, and there'll be very clear directions from the game as to where each driver should be when they get to the start. Look at how neatly they are in each row on the right and left. Patrick Den sees the green flag wave, and now we are underway. The Porsche launches well on the inside line, and already in the background it fans out 3 wide as Den gets to the inside line. The BMW right on the outside of him, side by side out of turn 1 between those two.
Absolutely, yeah, looking fantastic. I love the camera shake over the start-finish line gantry as the cars roar underneath. That was a beautiful touch there, and streaking into the lead is the BMW R car.
And here comes Cheverton in the Alpine. He's coming through from 3rd place. He's going to get the slipstream as well. Den wanted to chase the BMW for the toe, but he's not going to be able to get it here. Cheverton's on the outside line coming in towards Lecom with the Cadillac just watching, waiting, and Den's got on the rear brakes. Good save in towards Lecom, but he very nearly went around in front of the field.
Absolutely, yeah, that would have been here at a 0 moment, and he managed to hold it, but offline, of course, caught offline, and just skipped a couple of wheels out onto too far over onto the gravel there, Patrick Den.
So Nigel Joblin leads ahead of Matt Everton, then Patrick Dent and Luca Monroe, who is fourth, and he's under a lot of pressure, by the way, from William Stevenson, who's in the LMP2 lead. Then it is Faulkner, Ethan Faulkner in the second place, Adam Locke in third. They'll just be able to pull away a little bit more now. The hypercars, they're a lot quicker in a straight line. Through the corners, there's not much to choose between them and the LMP2s.
It's looking good. I'm just trying to keep an eye on in the background to try and find Smaggerscale here, whose deficit has grown to 9 seconds before they've hit Sector 2.
Yeah. 6 seconds off Monroe, his fellow Cadillac. By the way, you can select the same livery in this field, which makes it look a little bit weird. So we've got 2 311s in Hypercar and 2 45 cars in LMP2, which is going to be a bit weird to get your head around, and 2 59s in GT3. So that's going to be something to get your head around. But anyway, it is how it is in the sim at the moment. On board with Stevenson through the Blanchimont corner before the final bus stop chicane. Den gets very close to Cheverton up front. Just have a look up there, and he's looking to the outside for Patrick Den, but he can't quite make it work. The gap grows to Nigel Joblin in the BMW, who continues to lead at the end of lap 1.
Looks like Stevenson running wide, and I'm seeing in the driver chat, Luna Franks is saying it's disqualified her. So it looks like we've lost our first driver, sadly.
That is very unfortunate, and very early as well, to have unfortunately retired from the race. Sammy Joe Nakal is still leading the way ahead of Alistair Ramsey, and then a long way further back for the rest of the BMW. Well, that BMWs and McLarens, but rest of the GT3s is what I mean. Here are the hypercars out front again. Cheverton versus Dent, and this is a bad start, I'm afraid, for the pole sitter Patrick Dent. Just couldn't get himself underway quickly enough there, I'm afraid, and Joblin has gotten the lead. Cheverton got through as well on the way towards Les Combes, and now the difficulty of overtaking begins.
Definitely, yes, and of course would have had a pause for thought going through Les Combes there for the second time, and especially caught up behind a fairly wide-looking Alpine. I don't know if my eyes deceived me, but it looked like the rear axle getting a little bit lively here in these early stages as he's feeling the pressure of Den breathing down his neck right now.
Yeah, this is close stuff, as Faulkner seems to have DNF'd according to the sim at the moment. Faulkner is dropping down the field. We'll have a look at that in a few moments as Cheverton versus Den continues on. The battle for second position in the hypercar class through the Piff Paff chicane. First to the right, then to the left, and then in towards Stavelot as well. Yeah, that is Faulkner dropping down the field. Hopefully he hasn't had a technical problem.
No, it's reading as DNF on here. Game crashed, says Ethan Faulkner. One of the hazards of sim racing is we still get mechanical failures, and we obviously have disconnections in place of engine failure. But now it's Patrick Dent getting incredibly close here, and good defensive manoeuvrings there from Cheverton at this early stage.
Yeah, he is defending very well, but they are losing time out to the leaders at the same time. I'm not sure what's gone on further down, but
yellow flag
keeps popping up. Yeah, keeps popping up every now and again down there. We'll have a look if there's any replays, anything to see. We'll bring that to you in a few moments' time. Out of turn 1, though, the gap grows to 2 seconds now. Cheverton's still doing a good job of defending.
Yeah, this battle is serving neither of the drivers in second or third position right now. It is allowing Joblin to get away, and it's in both their interests, of course, to try and close that gap. But tell a racing driver not to fight, and you will get very short shrift.
Certainly. Through the trees they go in towards the bus stop, and this is the battle for third place in GT3. That is Tong just up in front ahead of Jekyll. We saw them in the grid a little bit further down the field, but they are now battling away over the podium place, the last podium place between these two McLarens in towards the bus stop chicane. But as I said earlier, the real race hasn't quite begun just yet for everybody, because traffic has not quite come to affect these drivers just for the moment. It's a very different race up to that point.
Yes, they're going to. I think they're going to need to try and make hay while the track is relatively clear, and try and get into their rhythm as soon as possible, because the drivers in the second and third classes are obviously going to have their hands full at various points throughout the race. Back though to the lead in the second and third position battle here, as Den just pushing too hard, maybe getting a little bit of dirty air across the front splitter there and losing the car.
These cars do get very loose.
He's waiting. He's waiting.
No, he's just waiting, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, doesn't want to rejoin in front of everybody else there. Smagersgale is going to have a good chance of gaining some places in that case, but these cars do get quite loose on the way into the right-hander of Pit Path there, and unfortunately that is done for Patrick Den, who spins around into the gravel and drops a long way back now. It's going to be a long race of recovery now for him.
Absolutely, he's going to have to rely, I think, on mistakes from others in front of him, but he's just got to put everything in behind him and drive the best race he can from here on in, and that's going to be his target, I think, from now. Just try and build the race pace throughout the course of this 300 kilometres.
Matt Cheverton's into the pit lane, as is Luca Munro. So some very early stops being made here. Now, have they got drive-through penalties or something, or what's going on? Let's have a look. Meanwhile, what happened on board with Patrick Den, down on the brakes for Pit Path.
No, he was too late. He was too late on the brakes, wasn't he? Just completely, I guess, missed his braking point ever so slightly, or unloaded that front splitter thanks to the proximity of the Alpine in front, and then doing the right thing and waiting patiently for his rejoin.
Yeah, it sort of makes you think about the opening lap as well, doesn't it? When he was really on the brakes on the way towards the com. Thankfully, he saved it that time, but this time was one too many.
I say this actually quite often, but there is such a thing as being too close to the driver in front. You can unsight yourself from your usual reference points, and I think that might be partly to blame to what happened there to Den. Who seems to have, he's obviously picked up second position. Cheverton and Munro coming out of the pits after their first stop in front of Smagersgale, who's then pitted himself. So the leader and Den having yet to pit.
Yes, as is Joblin. From the amount of time they've lost, I suspect they just drove through the pit lane and they just had a drive-through. I'm not entirely sure why, but I know that there are very strict rules on where you can start the race from, if you like. When we're on this rolling start, it tells you in no uncertain terms where you need to be and what you need to do to get to where you need to be. And if you're not there, then it does start to shout at you. So I do wonder whether it was drive-through penalties. This is on board with Luca Munro into the final
or is
chicane.
it going to be the Spa pit lane again?
He's got in all right.
Seems okay to this point.
Let's just see whether he actually drove through here, or actually did a stop. Oh no, we're not going to see, but never mind. I suspect we can work that out from the timing, and that suggests to me it is just a drive-through penalty. Here it is, and he's hit the pit wall on his own, but he's just weaving around to try and keep the tyre temperature in the tyres, because it does go away very quickly. Munro driving right the way down pit lane, so 3 hypercars with penalties because of the I'm presuming the rolling start.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not a wide pit lane in Spa to use to warm the tyres. I think you kind of have to accept your fate there. German Jekyll getting a little bit wide, but the previous lap you saw Tong brush the wall on the old pit wall on the approach to Eau Rouge. Clearly trying to just stretch the width of the track as much as possible to get the best angle into Eau Rouge, but I think he might need to just dial it back a little bit.
He's certainly applying the pressure at the moment for third place is Joa Jekyll. Let's now work our way through the right-hander of the curve pour Freya now. This is looking backwards towards Chu, who will be trying to come up to the back of this fourth-placed McLaren. You can just about catch glimpses of the BMW just in the background, but it is only lurking at the moment in the shadows. Through Blanchimont they go, and down on the brakes for the bus stop chicane for these two. Jekyll a bit too early on the brakes there. It felt like he just released the pressure for a moment and then got a bit closer again. 10 minutes into this race. I said it earlier, I think it was 8 or 9 laps maybe till we get to traffic. Probably 8 laps at maximum. That means we're probably still going to be waiting another couple before this battle is interrupted by prototypes.
Yeah, of course, it's a long lap here around Spa, and like I say, they're just trying to make the best of the clearest amount of track that they're going to receive for the duration of the race. Of course, the GT3s will suffer most, being passed by both the hypercars and the LMP2s, and sometimes both at the same time.
Up on the Kemmel Straight they go. As we now see Patrick Den. These would be all overtakes I think he's making here. I think that is Stevenson in the background. who is the leader in LMP2, certainly is. So the leader in LMP2 is actually third overall because of the hypercar drive-through penalties that have been going on.
Wow, a very unexpected place for Stevenson to be, and he will try and milk this slipstream as much as he can on the approach into the bus stop, and then he'll try and get as much as he can through Eau Rouge, Radion, and over the Camel Straight as well. But it might be just a bit out of reach right now.
Bit too late on the brakes there for Lassour. So easy to do. It's not really an ideal braking marker down there. And so you find yourself often going a bit too late on the brakes. On the way up now through Eau Rouge and Radion. I think he'll be hoping that he can keep the prototype behind for Lecom itself, because the LMP2 is actually quicker through parts, but Cheverton has got too much speed. He's flashing the lights and he will go through pretty easily. So there's the end of his podium.
Absolutely, just a little bit shy on the brakes as well, as Stevenson pretty aggressive on the apex of the first part of Lecom, and yeah, it seemed to me like the Jota was not the Alpine was not feeling particularly confident on the inside line on the way into the braking zone either. So he's just playing it fairly steadily, I think, at this point.
So interesting how these two cars are so well matched here through the corners. Look at on the straights though, these hypercars have got so much power, even though it's not like the LMP1 days quite, but they are very, very powerful machines still. Cheverton will get away, but then have a look through the pit-path chicane. On the brakes, these LMP2s are a bit lighter, they close in, and through the mid part of the corner as well. But on the power, there's no match for these hypercars, so just get away in towards Stavolo. Stevenson will close in again, but now he'll probably see Cheverton moving away and into the distance on the way towards Blanchimont. But a very good viewing there as to just how difficult it is to overtake an LMP2 these days in the top class. It used to be LMP2 finding it difficult to get past the GTs, but it's the other way around now. It's hypercar that struggles to get past LMP2, and there really isn't going to be very many occasions where those cars are lapped today.
No, I think that's absolutely spot on again. Stevenson a little bit late on the brakes. He's and skipped the second apex of the bus stop as well. Let's hope he's not penalised too greatly for that. He seems to have lifted up a little bit, got himself a big gap then to the Alpine in front. But you're absolutely right, and I think we're going to see incidents where the LMP2s end up running into the back of the hypercars. Looking at the performance differentiation into the braking zones was actually a little bit frightening. If you've only just passed an LMP2 and you're driving a hypercar, you've got to be watching your six somewhat.
Yeah, so that wasn't a traditional iRacing slowdown penalty for Stevenson. Effectively, the way that it works is it sort of evaluates the amount of time that you've gained when you cut the circuit here on Le Mans Ultimate, and effectively to sort of reduce the amount of time you gain, you can slow down yourself, and that's what he decided to do out of the chicane. Sometimes it doesn't work anyway, so I kind of think you might as well just carry on, really, and the penalty will assess what it assesses anyway, but because sometimes it doesn't quite work to sort of clear it, because you've still gained time after all. I think you might as well push on, but Stevenson deciding to try and alleviate that, and as I mentioned, you get 6 track limit points around here, but you can get as little as 0.25 points for one off track, and actually based on and compared to some other races, 6 track limit points for a 90-minute race is actually quite a lot. I'm not sure how to compare it to iRacing, but it could be up to 24 off tracks perhaps, so it seems like quite a lot.
Yeah, what I love about this particular onboards that we're enjoying right now is the fact that it's the same car, fixed setup, and you're just getting the difference between the two drivers as yes, moving to one side was Jelmer Jekyll, not quite ready to release the car in front of his tongue, and there he goes, spinning round, and I think possibly just Tong slower at the apex, and then a very unsafe rejoin into the BMW, sadly. Tong colliding then, I think that is that with Chu, who was not too far behind them. Yeah, that was Chu, and that was not a good rejoin from Peter Tong, unfortunately. And he's waving around now to assess the damage and assess the time loss here at the end of that. He was ran over pretty much by Jekyll there, and he's pulling off to the side of the road as he hit. He's trying to stay out of everybody's way as the prototypes are coming through for the first time. It was Joblin initially who came through. Then Dennis just gone through. Now Cheverton's going through as well. That McLaren looks a bit unhealthy to me, and he will surely have to come in to make his first pit stop at the end of this lap. close to crabbing on the way into Eau Rouge, so definitely a big lift as we cut to the main action. No, we could have cut to a replay in the main screen here, and this is all about that lapping BMW hypercar who goes to take the outside line. Tong, I don't think, was aware until he went to the turning point, and then was a little bit slow. In fairness to him, the Jekyll behind him was not exactly on the track at the time either, and then that's unsafe rejoin with the BMW, and yeah, that's going to cost. But I'm not surprised to see Peter Tong very circumspect heading into Eau Rouge, and now he's got Chris Humphries passing, not the same driver that passed him before, Jekyll, but the same livery, and it's the very worst place to have to pick up damage in Spa. You have the entire lap to go around before you can get into the pit lane.
It is, yeah. So Tong will be into pit lane at the end of this lap, and having to make 2 stops. I believe the GT3s will only have to make 1 stop on a normal day because of the amount of time they can go on fuel, but it may not be the same for the hypercars unless there's a lot of saving here at Spa especially. You should have to make 2 pit stops over the course of 90 minutes, so they don't go quite as long as they do in real life, which, to be honest, I think is a bit too long. So we've got the balance about right. They should be making about 2 stops here in 90 minutes. Chris Humphries, though, seemingly struggling to get to grips with the track at the moment, just running through the gravel a little bit there. He's over 10 seconds off of Chu at the moment, but he is at least inside the top 5 now.
Yes, and undamaged, I think, at this point. Might get a little bit of gravel rash. This is Jaden Chu. Oh, dear me. And just no, you just cannot expect a driver to do that to you. You see them, at the periphery of your vision, completely offline, and you just got to keep it pinned.
It's really unfortunate for Chu. Didn't do anything wrong there. It's a really poor rejoin from Jekyll, from Tong there,
yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah, in the McLaren, and so that has not done too much damage to the BMW, but surely will have shaken him up a little bit there, as in the background you might well catch a glimpse, not quite, of Tong coming into pit lane to make the first stop. Oh, and there goes Humphries, spins around, and he's actually found himself now at the pit exit. He's going to have to reverse. Let's hope this is a bit of a better rejoin. And it certainly is. Oh, he's turned his traction control a bit down.
Straight onto the racing line. Oh, dear me. Yeah.
It's back on again.
Not what you want at all, but again, possibly looking in his mirrors there, another faster car coming through from behind, and I think we can't ignore that as a factor in both of these key incidents we've seen so far.
No. It was a bad moment for Chris Humphries, unfortunately, but he's back on again, and this is how it happened on board. Now, let's just listen. Does the rear spin up, I guess? You can see the lights flashing there on the dashboard, suggesting that the traction control was working away, but he's just got it turned down a little bit too low for that, and he's spun around to the inside.
I suspect he got too much curb. There was quite a big bump that happened on board as well, and I think rather than necessarily wheel spin, I think there might have just been 2 rear wheels contacting the ground under power at different times, and that was what sort of pitched the car around. But yeah, it's a very frightening moment to find yourself pointing at the pit lane exit.
Yes. Luckily, it's not the sort of time in the race where you'd expect to see people coming the other way, outside of the pit exit, but either way, not a great place to find yourself. Here goes Adam Locke. I think this is Jekyll he's passing here on the way towards Blanchimont, so he's chasing down William Stevenson at the moment. It is a real shame that Ethan Faulkner's out of the race, because they would have had a really great fight for this one. Faulkner's been having real trouble with his sim today for whatever reason, and it is unfortunate to see him out of the race, but Stevenson's going to be kept honest here by Adam Locke, who I've seen do plenty of driving on iRacing before, and he's trying to chase down Stevenson, but clearly doesn't have quite the speed at the moment.
No, I felt the need to check in with our colleague Brad Dalton, who has spent plenty of time on this new sim platform. I just wanted to ask him about the rear visibility, whether there's any compromise. I'm trying to grope for excuses here for our racing drivers. He says no, rear visibility is just as good as you would expect it to be. So I was hoping to try and find some information there about the rear view, but no, he assures me all is well. So unfortunately, can't pin the blame at that.
Yeah, he'll have a virtual mirror on. They'll all have virtual mirrors on, I should say, in the top of their screen. It's fairly wide, actually, across the top, and so you should be able to see what's going on as we go on board here with William Stevenson. I'm so pleased that LMP2 is in this game as prominently as it is, because I personally think it's a real shame that they only race at Le Mans now in the World Endurance Championship. I think they could have found a way to squeeze in some LMP2s along with maybe a few less GTs than they actually ended up going with, but there you go, that's just my personal opinion. But what a great thing to have them in this game, and a prominent middle ground, if you like. If you like prototype racing but you don't want to go with the hypercars, there is another place for you to go, and that is for these LMP2s, which I think by all accounts are a little bit easier to drive.
Interesting, yeah, absolutely, and a little bit, and certainly an awful lot lighter feeling, I think, than the GT3s, and we shall see how driver fatigue and focus levels seems to affect them throughout the course of this. So mini endurance, I think it's fair to say. 300k is not a short race, and they'll be getting a really good workout out there as well. I'm fairly sure. Stevenson still characteristically pushing hard here.
Certainly is. He's got one of the Cadillacs just over in front of him. I think that is Luca Monroe in 4th place at the moment. James Magascale is still quite a long way behind him because of the opening laps. Can't tell which of them it is because they're in identical cars. Gotta wait for somebody to tell me. And there you go. Luca Monroe is in 4th at the moment, really wiggling over the top. So let's go on board with the Cadillac. You can compare it at home if you want to the iRacing one as well. It's the only... it's the front of the 2 Cadillacs at the moment, I should say. And up on the brakes, up over the top of the hill. Sounds wonderful, as always. But
I'll trust you on that. I don't have any sound coming through my ears. So.
Well, you know what
I shall have to pick that up later on, yeah.
It's a very good sound as they now brake for the long right-hander there of Brussels, and now towards No Name. Now GT traffic is here, so here again, hypercars coming through on the GTs. Luckily for them, the field is spreading out so much in GT3 that actually the traffic coming in all in one clump, especially first time round, didn't really happen because they are so spread apart.
That's exactly it. So Monroe managing to get past quite comfortably there. And the worst thing in the world for LMP2 and hypercars is when they come upon a GT3 pairing locked in battle, who are trying to, of course, have their own race and aren't particularly interested in what the drivers with much greater horsepower are needing to do behind them. Of course, they get race director instructions to allow them through. But they don't want to compromise their own race to any extent at all. There is a car just having made that pass as well, and I think that is likely to be a hypercar coming up from behind, because the gap between the closest gap we have in LMP2, by my eye, is someone of 7 seconds. That seemed a little bit too close.
I wonder whether Adam Locker's made a mistake, speaking of LMP2, by the way. This gap suddenly ballooned to 20 seconds. And he's only sort of all of a sudden 7 seconds ahead of Tarrant in 3rd place. So we'll have a look into that, see if anything's gone wrong there. But that is a tightening margin there for 2nd place in LMP2, and the 20 seconds out to the leader is very big indeed. Dane and Cheverton are the closest two in hypercar at the moment. The gaps in GT3 are quite large as things stand. Sammy Joe Nakula is doing a very good job here in the McLaren, and leading by a good 13 seconds. This is comfortable for the moment.
Yeah, it is comfortable, and he's looking pretty comfortable out there. And we get a good look at the predominantly red BMW of Alistair Ramsey right now, the number 31 car. Currently in that 2nd position, won't have eyes on Nakla and won't have eyes behind him on Jekyll. So he'll just be running his own race here and trying to optimise the strategy run as we get one of the Cadillacs coming up behind. Will they go round the outside, or I think perhaps not quite feeling the confidence to trust a GT3 going around the outside of it, but here we go. Should be able to breeze past now on this little straight.
There goes James Magascale through in 5th place, through on these GT3s once again. 25 minutes into this race, the 300 kilometres of Spa here on Le Mans Ultimate. You're very welcome. Good afternoon to everybody who's tuned in. It's good to have you along. Showcasing for the first time here on RaceSpotTV the broadcasting features of Le Mans Ultimate. I've got to say, I'm very impressed with it so far. Graphics are great.
It looks the business, doesn't it? It's acting nicely so far. I'm not going to curse it, but it's certainly as absorbing as any sim platform you care to mention. We're enjoying this, and as you say, having all the official entrance and with the good exposure around MP2 is a really nice feature. Smagascale pushing hard, struggling to keep the car within track limits through Blanche.
It's the classic way when you've got lots of runoff on the outside line there.
Yes.
It's there to be used after all. So there you go. On board again.
That's some nice paint effects as well. I'm enjoying the texture of the paint on the Cadillac and the reflections. I enjoy these little touches. The weave of carbon fibre and the Alcantara coatings on things. I do appreciate those little details, and that's a lovely little thing on there.
I'm pleased as well, by the way, that we've got this car in the race, or in the game, I should say, because the 311 Hypercar, I'm not sure it was used very many times in real life, maybe even only at Le Mans in 23. I don't remember it being at Le Mans last year, but it might have been. Either way, it's great to have some of the more obscure liveries and cars in the game. And by the way, the drivers today could have chosen, I'm going to read them all out here, could have chosen from the following hypercars: Glickenhaus, Vanwall, Peugeot, Alpine, BMW, Cadillac, Ferrari, Isotta Francini, Lamborghini, Peugeot again, Porsche and Toyota. They could choose, even the Glickenhaus is in this game. It's a great variety.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a shame we don't have a Ferrari out there. And I think we should have an instruction next time, maybe a lottery pick, so we make sure we get maximum coverage from all the manufacturers and entries, constructors' entries. Now we're on Smagascale. We are approaching. I think this is the leader of the GT3. Smagascale having started at the very back of the grid, not set in front of the GT3s, and then serving a drive-through penalty for positioning. We anticipate, or we speculate, I should say. And now into that outright fifth position, having overtaken Nakla there, the leader of the GT3s.
So another lap down for the leader of the GT3s. Nearly a minute off the front for Smagascale. I was wrong, by the way. It was at Le Mans in 2023 and 24, so apologies for that. But either way, good to have the livery and the car in the game. The number 2 and the number 3 car as well, by the way, are both in. The sim looks slightly different for the Cadillac as we go to the Alpine now. And the great thing as well about this game is going to be, as we get bigger field size, especially in the hypercar class, all of the manufacturers are going to have the chance to run up towards the front. They are not the same, if you like, exactly the same. They're not just the same car with different shapes put onto them.
Right.
That's not how it works. It is very different to that. It is, in terms of how they behave, they're very different from each other. They are, though, supposed to be balanced over a lap, and I would say, based on the things I've seen so far, they are pretty balanced over a lap on all of the circuits. I haven't seen a really overpowered car in hypercar around any of the circuits that are available, to my knowledge, yet, but maybe that will come with time, I suppose, when everyone's sweated out the game.
Yes, indeed. I guess we can iron out some of the niggles with the BOP issues they have for the track racing. But it's I suppose that's over a theoretical lap. I'm sure that certain circuits will well, I hope at least that certain circuits will sort of give an advantage to different manufacturers, and that overall things will balance out. But obviously the big ticket will be Le Mans, so you need to make sure your car is working for that one.
Certainly. As we make our way through the final chicane now with Cheverton. This is a close battle just up in front of them here. A couple of GT3s running nose to tail. McLaren versus BMW. Well, I can't see any of the McLarens or BMWs being close to each other at the moment, so that's a bit of a puzzler.
It feels like that might be a lapping situation. Maybe. Look at the 100-second gap, Humphreys to Nakla. Potentially that's the field spread at first to fifth.
That's not enough time for a lapping.
No, 100 seconds. No. okay. Next theory.
Yeah, well, yeah, quite. I'm not sure where the next theory is it's going to come from, but yeah. Anyway, answers on the postcard if you want. Cheverton, as we just cross over an hour to go, is now 8 seconds behind Patrick Den, who is slowly closing. Nigel Joblin, I should say, in the lead of this race in the BMW. Den, of course, had that big spin on the way towards the pit path chicane. Is now 16 seconds behind, but was as much as 20 behind. So this is closing in. He just needs to increase the rate at which he's catching, to be honest, because he can't go at this rate and have hoped to catch by the end.
No, but of course you've got to just race your own pace at this stage, and just kind of keep your fingers crossed for misfortune for other drivers around you. 15.7, that gap is dropping, and I wonder if Jobling is now into a sort of a management phase here of this stint.
Yeah, I wonder. He's surely got to be toning it back a little bit from absolute 100%, because yeah, right, he's got a very big lead. Oh, no, it breaks again towards the bus stop chicane. That has been noticeable throughout this race, hasn't it? These hypercars especially really high on the rear brakes.
It does appear that way, yes, and it's still just a little bit of learning to try and get those turn-in points. Maybe slightly unpredictable action here, maybe getting slightly too much apex that time through La Source. Sometimes it pays to be a little bit distant from that big dip that happens just on the apex, but especially in these very stiff hypercars, and the sparks flying as you go through the compression of Eau Rouge. Very nice indeed. Of course, we've got a rare, very hot sunny day here in Spa,
especially for this time of year.
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how the dates actually work in this game at the moment, by the way. We do have dynamic weather, although it's turned off for this race. It is in the sim, but not today. The weather pretty warm. So go on board with Cheverton again, just negotiating some more traffic there through Eau Rouge on the way up the hill again, with just less than an hour still to go. The reason why I bring up the point earlier, by the way, about these cars being so well matched despite the fact they handle differently, is because in real life it does feel like sometimes, especially manufacturers like Alpine, for example, are quite a step or two behind some of the other manufacturers at some circuits, but you don't really get that in Le Mans Ultimate. You can race an Alpine right up towards the front, even if that's perhaps not what happened in the real life race that year.
Indeed, yes, and I think that's probably a good thing. We don't necessarily want big differences between the manufacturers, between the cars. We want those subtle differences in handling, so a driver can really iron out and get familiar with what is their favourite choice and the one that suits them best. I have to say the Alpine does look like a very quick car, even when it's perhaps not at the front of the grid on track.
I like the look of the Alpine. It is good. As we go back to Munro, who is about twice as far away from Cheverton as Cheverton is from Joblin. As now he gets on board with him in towards the pit path chicane. It is going to be this race so much about learning for so many of these drivers. They'll be thinking, maybe didn't go quickly enough through there, maybe broke a bit too late for that corner there. Lots of learning still to go on here for these drivers. And after all, as I say, it's nearly a year in early access now, but this is the first Motorsport UK event we've done on the Le Mans Ultimate. Hopefully, it is the first of many still to come.
Certainly no reason not to, that we've found so far anyway, and I definitely back that sentiment. Yes, it's clearly early enough. There's nothing like just being in the pressure of a race and a long form race at that, to really test the metals, to really get very familiar with the way that this sim, these cars react to the driver's inputs, and obviously seat time is the most important thing when it comes to building speed in motorsport.
Absolutely. So, with just under 35 minutes gone, Nigel Joblin still leading ahead of Patrick Den, then Matt Cheverton, Luca Munro and James Magascaro in the hypercars. The reason I run through the order is because they are not too far away from having to make a pit stop. Now, if they end up making a pit stop before 45 minutes to go, which I believe they will, unless there's been some saving going on here, then there will be two stops to make, of course, but do you change tyres at some point over the course of the race or not? As I mentioned earlier, you've got the option of soft, medium and hard. If you're on the hards, certainly you'll be making it to the end without having to change tyres, maybe even on the mediums as well. But if you've chosen the soft compound tyres, you will likely have to change tyres after a single stint.
Yeah, I wonder if the drivers have decided to sort of go conservative en masse with their tyre choices, but yeah, definitely going to be an interesting situation. We've got a yellow flag on track. I can't see where that is at this stage, but it seems to have passed already, so it looks like that was a temporary off-track excursion.
I suppose so.
Just watching this...
Sorry, go on.
Just watching the Cadillac going up Eau Rouge, and certainly driver not quite at one with machine at this stage, struggling there to really get a very smooth action going in. The car getting quite light, and putting in a correction, a bit of opposite lock going through Eau Rouge is not a comfortable place to be.
Certainly not, no. Just over 15 seconds between Joblin and Den. That gap still coming down, but I think it may have been Taron who has been one of those drivers who's gone off in the recent past, because that gap's now 44 seconds to the leader, William Stevenson. Adam Locke 25 behind. He's been steadily losing time. I still think he's made a mistake at some point along the way as well, but Stevenson so far has been absolutely faultless. Let's have a look back at what happened on the start here. Difficult for us to tell really what the hypercars did wrong for them to get so many drive-throughs, but the lead in the GT3 category was interesting early on. There's Smaggersgale going diving down the inside. Sammy Joe Nuckley getting off to a good start, and at this point actually it looked like it was going to be a race between the front two, with Dustin behind him and everybody else following him pretty closely, but further on it got a little bit more difficult. Joe Jekyll ended up quite a long way further behind, had to make some passes, I presume on the way up towards Lecom maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this was 12th overall at this stage for John Jekyll, so clearly managing to stay with his McLaren class mate, as it were, as they head down. Maybe getting a small distant tow from the BMW in front, but it's going to have to be done on the brakes if it happened at all. And yeah, just a little bit shy, a little bit circumspect on the way in. But of course, the race did come to John Jekyll a little bit further along.
Stevenson's into the pit lane, so just about 37 minutes gone in this race, and William Stevenson is into pit lane in the United Autosports 23 car. Looks a bit like the Winward car from IMSA on the front, doesn't it? Maybe it was a collaboration last season, I can't remember. But there he is up on the jacks. He looks like he did choose the soft tyres in that case then. He's put some more softs on and another tank of fuel, and then a little bit later on he will take a splash, I suppose, with about 17 minutes to go.
Interesting stuff, yeah, absolutely. So obviously going for an aggressive strategy here, the P3's Stevenson. He has been further up the grid, and I think we'll obviously feature further up shortly. But now we'll see about the power of the undercut here as the first pitter on fresh tyres. What kind of pace can he extract from this first out lap and then first flying lap on his second stint?
Oh, bit wide. Oh, careful.
Yeah.
We evaluate. Although we can't see the track limit points from here quite. It's going to be something we just have to work out. I'm not actually sure what happens when you get to the limit. That might be those circles might just be displaying something. Now I wonder which colour is which. I think medium is sorry, yellow is medium, I think, or is it white? Can't remember. Anyway. Maybe yellow's soft, I can't remember now. I did look at this earlier on, and my memory, being as it is, has completely failed me again. So anyway, it's no difference between the leaders in LMP2, which is what I was really getting to. Adam Locke was dropping time. I thought maybe is that down to compounds? Clearly it's not, unless Stevenson's changed compound.
No, indeed. We'll see what Shuttleworth chooses. Will it be the white, yellow or black tyres? We're going to have to go with that as a measure at this point. No pit stops that I've seen so far from the GT3 class yet either. They're going to obviously run longer. And here is Locke, leader of LMP2, and trying to build that gap to Stevenson. I think now will be his main target this time.
In the real life hypercars, white is soft, yellow is medium, and red is hard. But there is black at the bottom there, so I don't know. don't know what those tyres could possibly be.
I mean, I've always thought all tyres are black, but...
Well, yeah, nice, well done. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to get to the bottom of it later on. Tarrant into pit lane meanwhile, so Locke will have an even bigger lead here now. Looks like Shuttleworth has dropped off the lead lap as well as a result of this. There is Tarrant on the floor again. The great thing, though, about this type of racing, the tyres and fuel can't be taken at the same time, so we can get away with not changing tyres if you want, but it will decrease your pit stop time. You'll have to take some time away, though, if you want to change tyres. And there you go, up onto the jacks for the 47 car. Reece Tarrant, who will now change over, maybe to the same tyres. If these guys are changing halfway, it's got to be 2 sets of softs.
Indeed. Nice little animation there as the car's weight gets taken off the wheels and the wheels drop down. I enjoyed that as well. But watching out then for Tarrant as in third place right now. Shuttleworth a lap down, so no real peril here for Tarrant. But he'll be keen to try and stay within that pit lane line and stay with Shuttleworth, who is trying to catch Stevenson. But I got a feeling that Stevenson is going to be quite comfortable on those new tyres out there, and no drama, it seems, in the LMP2 category with regard to track position at this point. There we go.
Joblin's losing quite a lot of time. 12 seconds is now the gap to Patrick Den as Adam Locke comes in, so that will resolve itself in the lead of LMP2. Joblin, though, and that might be the reason in the background. You can see a couple of GT3s as Adam Locke pulls into the pit lane. I'd imagine he will be changing tyres as well. As I mentioned, I think these guys will be going for 2 sets of softs instead of trying to hold on to a set of tyres throughout the whole race and being careful on them. I've decided that the flat-out strategy is the best.
Yeah, confirmation. The yellow tyres that we saw predominate in the field are the mediums. Softs are supposed to be white, hards red. So I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure that the hard tyres are showing as black right now, and perhaps because of the elongated fuel strategy and fuel stints for the GT3s. That's probably why we were seeing all of those drivers on the blacks.
Jaden Chu into pit lane as well here in the BMW. It's quite early for him, but surely he can fuel and go to the end, unlike Adam Locke, who will have to pit again. Now, will these hypercars have to pit again? It's starting to become doubtful as we get towards the halfway stage of this race. Hour and a half in length, of course, but it is going to be the LMP2's pitting twice only, maybe, as Locke has gained a bit of time in this pit stop cycle, although cold tyres are something he still hasn't had to quite deal with just yet. There's no tyre warmers in the WC anymore, of course, and so you've got to lose a lot of time. 17 seconds as it was as he got the bottom of Eau Rouge. Look at the gap already ballooning over the top.
Yeah, it's definitely growing, as you say, and the car visually getting very, very light over the crest there, which was really interesting through Lake Com then, and getting enough turn-in, getting enough rotation there on the car to tackle those apexes, not suffering too much. Out of Malmedy and into Bruxelles we go down the hill. This should test the tyres neatly. Oh
no, that will warm them up. That will warm them up a little bit through the right-hander at Bruxelles. I told you that they were very cold, and he won't be worrying about that anymore, but goes for a spin. It's so difficult to get used to these cold tyres in the WEC these days. Never used to be the case. Used to have tyre warming cabinets that they're not allowed to use anymore, and so even in what looks like a fairly warm day, it's struggled to get them up to temperature again.
Absolutely, and I must stress, wasn't laughing at the plight of our driver, just at the timing of me saying that the tyres would be tested. That was what caused me to giggle there for a moment. And so apologies to Locke for that moment.
Patrick Den, meanwhile, comes into pit lane a lap short of halfway. So does that mean he'll have to splash with the others carrying on here as he pulls into the box? Nicely. Oh, no, not quite so nicely. So you notice that up there, they just get onto the jacks immediately there and sort of wheeled back into positions. We have a look at Adam Locke here. I mean, I can't really say he's done anything wrong with that other than the fact he's on cold tyres.
Yeah, it just looked like maybe just, the tiny amount of overspeed into Bruxelles, but of course the the corner is going downhill as you are trying to slow down and arrest the car's weight on the way into the late apex of Bruxelles. So yeah, as I said, a big test for the tyres, and unfortunately the tyres failed that test at that moment.
And up on the jacks for Patrick Dent as well. Seems that Cheverton's the only one on mediums in the front, so will he skip tyres and get out ahead of the Jota Porsche here as he now accelerates away again? So sorry, just to complete my point a couple of moments ago, I wondered if we'll be able to see it with someone else coming into pit lane, but effectively if you miss your stall, you don't do the reversing lock yourself in Le Mans Ultimate. Effectively, the game puts you up on the jacks and sort of wheels you back into your slot as if you would in real life when your teammate's in front and you have to come in at a weird angle. They put you up on the jacks and sort of wheel you about. That's effectively what they do there as well. So it doesn't count towards the actual pit stop time in the sim, but it does lose you time obviously in real life as you get yourself into the box again. Patrick Dent now on the cold tyres then, looking for a bit of an undercut on Joblin here, who's still out front.
Yeah, and I have to say I was hoping Patrick Dent would have been able to build a bit more of a competitive position for himself, given his qualifying pace. Obviously, woes on the first couple of laps, but he's clearly got the pace within him. Let's see what happens then after the pit stop, as we've got BMW hypercar and McLaren, and there is that slight crawling backwards that's happening with the McLaren. I don't know if it's one of those situations where you're in a train and there's another train moving backwards or forwards alongside you, and you're not quite sure whether you're the one moving or not. They're in the pit lane, but just inching backwards slightly and waiting to get the car fully serviced. I imagine we've got fuel going in right now.
Is he trying to get out from behind the BMW, but he's scared of reversing and disqualifying himself? He's going between having the pit limiter on and not, because he's flashing the lights there in the way that would happen when you're on the pit limiter. And Joblin didn't seem to change tyres there. I didn't see him up on the jacks from that angle there, unless I missed it. Cheverton is going to be still stationary in the Alpine, but where is Patrick Dent going to be compared to these guys? As he's out towards the bus stop chicane at the moment. He's not going to get out ahead of Joblin here, but he will be on a bit of an undercut.
This is a nightmare situation for Den, who was hoping to get that undercut working, and then finding two different class cars with a blue flag situation passing one another. And here we go then, and Den is going to get them as a big rear wheel spin for Cheverton for a moment there.
That was not good news, because that was James Smagerscale who's right in the directly pit stall in front of him there. Yeah. Cheverton has to come around him. So in other sims, you can drive through people in a very unrealistic manner. In these in the Mans Ultimate anyway, you have to drive around the driver who directly gets ahead of you, and Cheverton will have lost a bit of time doing that.
There goes Denven back into second position, Cheverton into the third place, but will have lost time, as you say, to Den. Some 10 seconds deficit now between the two of them.
The yellow flag is out meanwhile, out on the circuit. Hard to tell who it is for as of right now, as down off the jacks goes Munro, that looks like. No, that's Smagerscale, excuse me. Seem to be rolling backwards there ever so briefly. As I mentioned earlier, you've got to be very careful in this game that you get dropped on the circuit and start rolling, because it will happen. Knuckle has made the only stop of the race in GT3, and as has Alistair Ramsey as well here in the BMW. So we're back out onto the circuit again for number 31. Still trying to chase down that McLaren, but at the moment that gap is only growing.
Yes, indeed. But certainly splitting the race neatly there, can actually afford to underfuel the car slightly now that we're down to just under 41.5 minutes to go on the race. And out of the pits we go with Alistair Ramsey then second in class, 25 seconds deficit to Nakla, the leader. Some about a full minute ahead of Humphreys at this point, and Chu and Tong are a lap down on the leader already at this stage, then fourth and fifth. So Nakla having lapped up to P3 in class.
Yep, certainly has. There you go. There is the McLaren out front by nearly half a minute. It is the second largest leading margin at the moment. Ooh, just struggling a little bit. Poo on there. A little bit of oversteer. Well held.
It feels like we need to shuffle the drivers a little bit. and put these dominant leaders all together, if possible, in the same class. I think that'd be interesting.
Well, they're probably only good at their own class. I'll suggest. Chris Humphries comes into pit lane. Was he causing the yellow flag there for a moment as the nightmarish pit entry struck again? Well, Jekyll is still in pit lane, by the way, and serving what seems like the longest pit stop in the world at the moment. Still at the moment in the box as Humphries is moved into his slot before he can start refueling again.
Absolutely. So obviously it's going to hurt him to a certain degree in timing. It's not an optimised pit stop, but nowhere near the problems that you would have on track. But yes, I'm doing well so far. I haven't made any Jekyll and Hyde jokes.
I was thinking about that as well.
When you said he's waiting in the pit lane, I almost went there, but I didn't. I've resisted.
It's too easy.
Yes.
It's down off the leaderboard for the moment, though, on the left-hand side. So we follow Matthew Cheverton here, 25 seconds off of the lead of Michael I keep doing that. Nigel Joblin, excuse me, in the BMW out front by 14.5 seconds. There's on the bottom of your screen. Still hungry.
What I'm hearing, there's a rumour that Jekyll might actually be out. Can no longer provide power to the car, it seems. So, unfortunately, we might have another DNF there on our hands.
What did he say? No. I can no longer give gas. The car no longer responds. Is the car on? Do you need to turn the car on again? I don't know.
Yes.
Can I turn it off and on again?
On, off and on again, yeah. you don't work in IT. You're in IT.
It's my solution. I don't call IT. I just turn it off and on again. Anyway, just under 39 minutes remain. Unfortunately, it does look like it is going to be the end of the road for Jekyll, which is a shame. So further down, Humphrey, and there is the McLaren. Doesn't even look like it's in the pit box to me. But anyway, maybe it is.
It's Parc Fermé almost, really, where he's parked, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Humphries has made his pit stop without problems. He's back out onto the circuit again, one lap down in 5th place. So we've got at least 5 of the GT3 still going. Unfortunately, Ethan Faulkner retired from the race very early on in LMP2. He's been having game crash problems here this afternoon, and so he unfortunately had one at the worst moment and has dropped out of the race since. Nigel Joplin, though, is still leading by some way. Patrick Den and his spin through Piff-Paff is starting to come back to bite him, really. I'm not sure it's covered his 16-second loss at the moment, but he would certainly be a lot closer, and he is quicker, based on what we've seen since his spin, than Nigel Joplin, who still leads.
Indeed, yeah, and of course through qualifying as well. So Den is doing his best here to make a race of it up front. But still sort of waiting for what is becoming a decreasing chance of a mistake from our outright leader Nigel Joplin. There's a comparison of the lap times, and actually it's furiously close.
Best lap time covered by less than 1/10 of a second, and the live gap 15 seconds as of right now. Slides into the bus stop. It's so awkward in these cars, those slow speed corners.
Indeed, I mean it's an awkward corner for anything really, I think, but it does seem particularly exaggerated for the hypercars.
It's just not very good at slow speed, these hypercars really. But getting them out on the power again up to high speed, you're much more happy with it. And through Eau Rouge and Radion, it is a much better car, completely flat out. Though you do have to take the right line. Can't go flat out side by side and both stay on the road, I wouldn't suggest, in those hypercars, but thankfully we haven't seen side by side up the hill there between those. And we've not seen any, famous last words, but with 36 minutes to go, we've not seen any really hairy traffic moments either, in terms of people in prototypes making rash manoeuvres on GTs.
No, we have seen a GT3 sort of lose his head while being passed to a certain extent, but yeah, not the other way around. I think Joblin there. I don't know if we can talk about this art car livery on the BMW for a moment. I hate it.
Do you?
I really do, yeah. It feels unfinished to me, but it's a hot take. I know it's not necessarily popular opinion, but yeah. I noticed Jilted Gaming in the chat saying he had a similar issue to Jekyll, and he said he mashed the throttle in neutral and banged it into first, and it worked. So that's good. Try anything.
I'm telling you, the car's not on. It's not on properly. You need to get it into first gear with some revs and you'll be away. I think this car looks really good, to be honest with you, but there you go. It's certainly better than that art car, BMW art car. Do you remember from Daytona about 7 years ago or something?
Oh, yeah.
Or a GTE. That's a bad art car. This is absolutely fine. This is lovely. Anyway.
But we'll agree to disagree. I think it's
well,
the way to take that one.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
35 minutes still to go.
I think for me, the BMW hypercar is a beastly looking, fantastic race car with that terrible looking grille at the front, which is really an aggressive look. And then it just doesn't quite feel like the livery suits the car, I think, is my biggest problem there. But hey.
We'll get back to that, because Adam Locke is into pit lane now in the CrowdStrike Racing LMP2. Number 45. It's not the only number 45, but up onto, that's very nicely in the box, didn't need much movement. And so he spun through the final chicane, and I wonder whether he decided after doing that to just pit in because that would cut his losses. Let's see. Spin through the first part. There you go. Stuck in the middle of the road. He just got out the way. Oh no, he didn't want to go over the grass. Over here. No. It's a good job he had a lot of space behind him.
There's quite a dip down there, isn't there, with that drain point as well. So yeah, making a decision to pit. I assume that he had to pit regardless. It's not the case that he spun and was kind of reduced his options down to one, ended up into the pit lane by default. But yeah, clearly losing time. So head on in and change the tyres. You probably scrubbed them going. Spinning the car, sort of half spin and then over onto the grass as well. So yeah, probably a sensible choice. It's
not going to get yourself beached, I don't think, though. Getting on the outside and over the curb down there, over on the grass. But yeah, it would lose you quite a lot of time, I've got to say. So there you go. Back to see the three classes on track together here in a moment as Adam Locke comes through on either the race-leading GT3 or the fourth-placed GT3. This is the problem with having two cars of the same number and the same livery. It's either one of the two, but anyway, this is on board with Adam Locke as he tries to pass GT3, and in a couple of moments, a Cadillac's going to come roaring past us both.
Oh yes, and more of this view, please, Mr. Director. This is great to see the telemetry trace, speed building, gear selection, everything on the screen without interrupting the main view out of the front as well. It's great to see how the drivers are treating the cars. Full throttle there, straight onto full application of the throttle, just really sitting the car down on the rear axle and the car responding nicely.
Is there a sim that replicates this kind of throttle and brake inputs in real time with the right revs and the gears all perfectly matched up with what we're seeing on the screen at the moment? I'm not sure.
Not to the same fidelity, yeah. I think you're onto something there. I think this giving so much real estate on screen to the traces certainly allows you to get a much better view of the degrees of and the graduation of the throttle, and of course the trail braking activity as well. No, I think you're absolutely right there. It's a great look.
It's probably the best of any sim, this kind of ability to look at what they're doing. And I'll tell you what this is going to be very useful for is when we figure out whether they're fuel saving or not in longer races.
Yeah.
In other sims we just sort of have to go quiet and listen for a moment, but we're going to have absolute access to it. Obviously no fuel saving really required here, so it's not particularly useful to see, but in the longer races we will be very clear as to indeed whether they're saving fuel and then how much.
No, indeed. I'm just staring at that throttle trace now as we head into Eau Rouge over the top of Raidillon, and we're completely pinned. We're not saving anything going through there, but he did appear to be blipping, changing down all the way to first gear into the bus stop as well. So that was lovely to see.
There may be an auto blip on, to be honest.
There's a little bit there.
So, in these cars. I don't think he'll be doing that himself, but you never know. Up on another one of the GT3s. We saw it when we were off board, by the way, how close the Cadillac was. It's still not come past us because these cars are so similar in speed. There is the Cadillac now, finally getting to the back, and the three classes will be on circuit together here in a few moments. I think it's Chu. Yeah, it is, just in front here in the BMW. There goes Locke past, and there goes the Cadillac as well.
Indeed, but not enough to get the manoeuvre done before P1, and I think he's going to be waiting then all the way to the run out of Stavelot before he can really stretch the legs of that Cadillac.
In towards pit path. I think you're right. It is going to be a follow the leader job through here. 7 seconds, by the way. 13 seconds, I should say. Locke is behind Taron at the moment. And so that is going to be a gap that closes, but I'd imagine it will be one that goes the way of Locke once Taron comes into pit lane pretty shortly. Here now comes the Cadillac through on the outside line as we cross over officially half an hour to go. It uses its speed to roar on past. There you go.
Yeah, much more top end, much more torque at the peak here than, of course, those old LMP1 at the end of their life cycles that barely felt an engine note changing up from 5th to 6th. These hypercars do have that extra little bit of kick, and he passes one of the McLarens there as well, and moving on through. So we're getting 3 cars on track together for an extended period here.
Absolutely, good to see.
Ooh.
Good to see the traffic. That was a bit awkward.
Yes.
Traffic management is so difficult to manage, but there's going to be a lot of drivers in the sim racing community, I think, who get a lot better at traffic management over the course of this game's life cycle, because I think there's quite a lot of drivers who don't necessarily do it very often, but are very interested by hypercar racing, new to the World Endurance Championship maybe, giving this sim a bit of a go, and hopefully it will get better and better. There definitely is only one way of getting better at it, and that of course is by just doing it. So we'll hopefully see a lot of that as we will hopefully see a bit of traffic management going on from Nigel Joplin here in a few minutes when we go on board with the leader.
Yeah, and there's another flashing yellow flag. I wonder if that's just cars being passed at different points, and just a couple of wheels off the circuit. But no sign of Joplin slowing down or reducing. I did see that gap open out to 18 seconds, but I'm guessing that was just Joplin struggling past the LMP2 there that is becoming a decreasing in size dot in his mirrors. But I think that probably held him up through the middle sector. Oh, there's a big slide then from Humphries.
This was the spin on the fleeting yellow flag that we will have seen. Yep. Big spin for Humphries to get himself back onto the circuit again. That's Chu in the background, who's about to put him a lap down. So Humphries almost a lap off 3rd place now, and 2 laps off of the lead entirely in LMGT3 at the moment. So that is a long, long way back for him. But at least he's still going and getting the experience of a 90-minute race round here.
No, absolutely, and of course I imagine most drivers starting the race today, their main goal, their first goal, of course, is to finish and to bring the car home and learn as much as possible in the heat of battle.
Absolutely. Here comes the BMW in towards pit path. Through on the right-hander. And then the left, just about staying as tight as you can to the apex, really. Not much to those corners. Run out as far as the gravel will let you. They've done a much better job with Spa in these recent years with track limits enforcement through here. Put the gravel right towards the end of the racetrack, and it's all of a sudden they've had no issues with track limits. Who knew?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the answer was staring them in the face the whole time, I think, wasn't it? Yes, I recall drivers in many classes saying we can't see the track limits, we can't find our way around them. Put gravel there, suddenly they can see their way around the track and know where to put the wheels, or at least leave a safety margin there. As we were asked about, are there any battles on track? It's been difficult for sure to this point. I'm not sure about Chu and Tong. They were fairly close together at one point. There's a chance that they might be within sight of each other, but yes, it is definitely difficult to have those close battles as we experiment here with not far away from a full field, but certainly the drivers working the wheel no less furiously.
26 minutes to go. This is Matt Cheverton. I personally don't believe the drivers, they can't see where they're going. That's total rubbish. That's just an excuse, isn't it, for them to go off the circuit? Yes. I think that's anyway, that's just my opinion. On board with Matt Cheverton and the Alpine. I've noticed actually off board this Alpine, it sounds very electric-y in especially on the deceleration periods when you're regenning lots of energy, of course. But it's very interesting how these yeah, there you go. Even on power to sounds very like the electric motor is working away almost at all times in the Alpine.
Yeah, could well be. Of course, the petrol heads would argue there is no such thing as electric-y sound, but I know exactly what you mean. That whine of what's happening, and I think as we progress through the technical regulations, we will see that electrical power being deployed, and we'll be able to hear it as well.
What would they describe the sound as then, if not electric-y?
Well, I think petrol heads generally would claim that they have no sound. They're in comparison, of course, to the internal combustion engine. I'm with you. I know exactly what you mean, but just anticipating, I think, perhaps comments that might come in. But yeah, absolutely. I think it adds another layer, doesn't it, to what's going on for the drivers. It's complex. It's difficult. It's peak technology. And it's being tested over the long haul, and that's exactly what you want. That's the spirit of motorsport right there.
And for these manufacturers, great learning about hybrid engines that they can hopefully take forward to the masses a little bit later on, when they maybe not in these car forms. We're not going to be driving around in Alpine.
And more pity, yes.
But we can dream about that.
Unless we can get maybe a Valkyrie, but I think that's about it in terms of road-going versions. Yeah.
In terms of the actual technology, though, they can take forward something from these engines. As it does sound very different off-board, doesn't it, to on-board? I think the on-board sounds a bit more like what the Alpine does in real life. Actually, I think the Alpine sounds quite good on board, but off-board it does sound a bit like it is a fully electric Formula E car, if you like, with a little bit of combustion in there as well. But I guess at these sort of high speeds, that is where they are using electric motor. I guess the concern when these rules for me were announced in the real world was the fact that the hybrid engines were just so expensive in LMP1, and everyone said, class is too expensive and whatever. I thought, how is this going to solve the problem? Clearly it has been solved, the expenses problem, because plenty of manufacturers are now taking up the class, but it's still maintained its hybrid element, which is what made the top class in the WEC what it has been for the last 10 years.
I guess, if they've written the rules to such an extent that they've had such an influx of manufacturers and a wide variety, they've also been able to, share the rule book, the parameters with IMSA. That has helped tremendously to flesh out both fields, I think, and grow that situation for them. But essentially, if the manufacturers who are not short of a bob or two, let's be honest here, they are able to plug a lot of R&D budget into what is happening in road-relevant technology, and of course pushing batteries and electrification certainly is in line with the way the world's going. So it's about shaping regulations that will suit the real world in 5-6+ years time, and that's what made this hypercar regulation change so attractive, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh dear, as one of the, I think that's either Locke or Shuttleworth going pretty deep there on the brakes ahead of Cheverton, who will just make his way past.
I was just thinking from the perspective of Cheverton, the word Axel written on the engine cover of the LMP2 could not have been more appropriate. I'm sure he was shouting in his helmet something that began with the same two syllables.
Yeah, maybe. As we go back to, again, the very small difference between LMP2 and hypercar through the middle sector of this circuit. On board with Adam Locke here in the CrowdStrike LMP2. He's not actually that much quicker than Taron, who has been ahead of for quite some time in this race, but Taron and Stevenson, of course, still have to make a pit stop in LMP2, which are making 2 stops here today. And have already made their tyre change by the looks of things, so it will be just a splash and dash for those two at the very end. But Taron is going to drop behind Locke. It's just a good showing in these last few moments here, as we saw Taron sort of starting to match Adam Locke for speed, but nobody's been able to match William Stevenson for speed, that's for sure.
No, he is. He's checked out, and his only battle really at this stage is with himself. and the equipment, I guess, at his disposal. But he's certainly been our most dominant of leaders in across the classes. Closest gap then to the front of the field, then to Jobling. She's under 15 seconds for, I feel like, the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, a little while, yeah. And by the way, you've got some disagreeers in YouTube, by the way. Carl Barrelstock, and a good afternoon to you. The BMW Hypercar model is just so nice. There you go.
I think it's good. I think it's a fantastic car. I just wish they hadn't painted it.
I'm not sure whether Carl means the painting or the...
yeah, he's going to have to clarify. Oh, dear me, as lock gets locked up. And around he goes.
Thankfully, he doesn't get stuck in the gravel, but he'll get back going again and back out onto the circuit. 1 minute 40 or so off of the leader right now. That will just increase the gap to Tarrant, who will be starting to think if that happens again, maybe Locke can be jumped in this pit stop.
Absolutely, you can see just feeling around with the throttle there, going through the corner, not confident to smoothly apply the throttle once again. Wants to make sure those tyre temperatures are where he needs them. I'm sure the rears will be a little bit hotter than he would like, but I think getting that confidence back now as he goes full throttle through and back on down in towards Piff Path Lefania, as they have been alternately called. But yeah, definitely it seems to me like the LMP2 cars are a harder car to drive than the hypercars. Seem to be working the wheel, working the throttle a lot more through the corners. So I don't know if that delivers more satisfaction to the drivers, or it's a novelty factor, or quite what it is. But certainly they've been popular today.
Yeah, that's absolutely flat out through Blanchemont for Adam Locke. It's the game just 6 below 19 minutes to go now. Drivers will be thinking about how much fuel they have to put in for this final stop and hoping that they've made enough. Thankfully, they don't have to go through both sections of the Spa pit lane, which I'm not sure, by the way, quite can be accessed. One of the things that interests me actually a lot about the future of this sim is just how many we are going to get in a session. Now, at Le Mans in real life, of course, we get 62 because there are 62 grid slots. Do we get 62 places in the sim as well? And how does that change over the course of the different circuits on the WEC calendar? Because Imola, for example, only has 37 pit boxes, I think, as does Circuit of the Americas as well, if I'm not mistaken. And so those are the two that were holding back the entries number for the World Endurance Championship in 2024 at 37. That's why we had 18 hypercars and 19, or was it the other way around, 19 hypercars and 18 GT3s. That's why we had that number. Are we going to get... What number are we going to get in Le Mans Ultimate? I'm not sure we quite know for the moment.
No, indeed. I mean, maybe we'll be getting pre-qualifying to suit the size of the pit boxes. We already saw in Spa here just tonight just how tight those pit boxes are arranged, and how you can just be completely boxed in by someone who happens to pit the same point as you in the box ahead.
I think it's a great thing, by the way, that you can't drive through people in pit lane. It makes it a lot more realistic. You have to think about pit strategy. Hopefully people will be paired up in sort of teams and you have to work it out between you. That'd be nice.
Absolutely, yeah. You definitely, yeah. I mean, I guess that's one approach is to have pit boxes shared between drivers in the team, as squeezing down the inside there. And that was a nice moment, but unfortunately ruining it slightly, coming through No Name Jackie X corner as we go out onto the gravel, but rescuing it well. This Hertz Team Jota of Patrick Den. He is in that second position and still trying his level best to press forward. But what's happening here?
There was a very persistent yellow flag, and Peter Shuttleworth looks to be the one that was bringing it out. Oh, and he's lost his rear suspension there at some high speed. He spins around on the way down towards Eau Rouge. Goodness me, that looked very similar to what happened to a Ferrari hypercar in real life a couple of years ago. Just losing the rear left completely. That car is damaged, and he can't go over particular speed. Here comes one of the LMP2s. Goodness me, and he's spinning again up Eau Rouge.
Right. He can't turn right. There's clearly some asymmetrical damage on one part of the car or another. I think we might be seeing the second and third parts of a 3-part accident, and there may have been something that precluded all of this into Eau Rouge, or possibly even coming out of the bus stop. We'll endeavour to find out what happened earlier on, but a sort of a daisy chain difficulties here, unfortunately. And we'll see now, trying to turn right. Can he get... No.
No. He's got no rear wing anyway, so, you know, even if you turn right, he wouldn't be able to hold it to the ground, so... Oh, that was close. One of the McLarens there was very nearly interrupted. He's got these sort of supporting elements of the rear wing, if you like, but he's not got the actual thing itself. So he's just staying out the way now of the other drivers. He needs to stay at a slow speed again. He keeps getting up to a high speed and then spinning. He needs to sort of trundle back to the pit lane slowly. And by the way, we do have the option in the graphics to put up a full course yellow wall safety car. At the moment, they're not quite into it's not in this race. Just the yellow flag, local yellow flags will be shown. And again, another spin now through the long right-hander. I wonder what point he's going to finally get hold of this damage and learn what speed he can go at.
Julian Altena asking, does LMU not have towing? I think the sort of ultra-realism factor here is that it does appear that you have to try and get yourself back to the pits. This is then out at the bus stop, so I'm sure that it happens into La Source. No one around him. So what went down here, Ewan?
Oh, wow. That's a technical, if ever I've seen one. And that's why it took him so long to get back going again. So he smacked into the wall just as we were, as the cameras were changing. He was off camera for a very brief moment, then he was in the wall. So he's had something to, whether this is his wheel or the game itself, I suspect it's a wheel problem. And he's scaring that McLaren by getting at the end of the road. Now he'll finally get going again. Needs to spin himself back round again, then the long trip back to pit lane, but effectively he came into turn one. I don't think he's quite realised the extent of his damage yet, and he spins straight in front of the Cadillac. So the yellow flag came out again, and the Cadillac had to go right round the outside there.
And this is where we picked him up before, well offline, fully on the inside, coming through La Source. It's a very, very strange situation there to have lost the rear wing and just the car pitching itself straight in. I think I counted a 900-degree spin there on the gap between Eau Rouge and Radion.
He's not off again, is he? There's a yellow flag out.
Well, I mean, that car did look virtually undrivable, and unfortunately, as a clockwise circuit, there was plenty of right-hand turns he had to go through.
Yeah. Up on the jacks briefly or I should say fueling for William Stevenson. Not sure if he did take any tyres, but he can do if he wants to, because he's got a very big margin indeed. Nearly a minute's worth of a lead over Tarrant, who still has to stop, and Locke as well, who is just over a minute off of Stevenson. So 13 minutes remain. And out back onto the circuit again for Stevenson. Looks like he's going to take a very nice victory here in LMP2. I wonder if Shitworth still hasn't made it back to pit lane yet. He's still causing yellow flags, I think.
Oh dear me, yeah, it's here he is, and he's got to navigate that difficult pit lane as well. Can he actually get the car in? And he'll be incredibly relieved to find himself back into the pit lane, I think, now. And we'll see if any repairs can be enacted on the car here. I think missing the pit box as well, just to add insult to injury.
Yeah, that is not ideal at all. I'm not sure quite what the damage repair times and things are like yet, actually, in Le Mans Ultimate, so we might be able to find out here if he wants to continue on with the race. There is Stevenson out onto the circuit again, still leading the class by some distance. So he's having a good time of things. Out front, 51 seconds out in the lead. 13 seconds is the lead overall. It's going to be the closest race to the finish, I think, between Nigel Joplin and Patrick Dent, but it is going to go the way of the BMW as things look right now with just 12 minutes to go. Dent has shown himself, though, to be a bit quicker in qualifying and indeed over the course of this race, post that spin we saw into this chicane.
Yes, indeed, and the well-held drift moment as well earlier on into Lake Com while he was battling, and 12.9 seconds the gap coming down, but it does feel like it might be slightly too little, too late as we go back to the Johnson Porsche then of this must be Den, and see how he is, how the car is feeling on track at this stage.
It's one of the privateer Porsches, of course, not a factory run car in real life.
Oof.
That really bounces over the car. I said in my lap on board earlier, you do want to hook on the inside curve there through the left-hander of Lecon, but not quite like that.
No, I think he was taking a little bit too literally there, wasn't he? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say smash the curves, to be fair.
Indeed.
But he did.
Yeah, that was aggressive for sure. So clearly pushing very hard, and it's bought him a little bit of time over the course of this mini sector. Second place, what could have been here for a battle for the lead. I think we had the chance of a really strong outright victory battle. So maybe next time we go racing with Le Mans Ultimate and Motorsport UK, maybe we will see them and actually following the driver in front of. And how often do you see that there? You start focusing too much on the car in front, and you end up just following them off the circuit.
Yeah. Tunnel vision, very easy. There's just over 10 minutes to go here for Den to catch up. He needs to gain at least, well, probably 3 seconds a lap if he wants to realistically have a chance at overtaking. That is unlikely to happen, although the gap is tumbling down in towards the bus stop chicane here. Is Joblin starting to worry about fuel levels at the moment? With 10 minutes to go, I'm not entirely sure, but gap is starting to just plunge downwards a little bit here, and he has got 11 seconds to fall back into if he does need to save fuel. But if he's realised he needs an extra lap now, he's left it far too late.
I think we can only really tell if we can get on board with Joblin, because it could be a traffic situation again, like we saw earlier on. And there you can see he was behind the BMW and potentially even an LMP2 behind there as well. So a slow lap for Joblin will give great motivation to Den, but of course he won't know that detail that we've just caught there from our director. Fantastic art shot here. Yes, this is what we like.
The dust clouds that kicked up in this game, by the way, are fantastic. I know it's a weird thing to be sort of admiring, but you're not supposed to be off the circuit, I suppose. But yeah, they do look fantastic, and nice slow motion. I didn't even know we could have those. Very nice. Looks like one of those. We're going to end up having one of those things they have in the middle of WEC races, where they just randomly show slow-mo shots of random things, 30 seconds for 30 seconds in the middle of the race. For no reason.
Here we go.
Have another
exactly
one.
As on demand. Yes, indeed. And you can also see some of the dust and dirt pick up on the car as well, which is great to see. Are we back to live, or are we looking at a replay? We are back to live now. Yeah. Absolutely.
8.5 remaining. I think you're right. I think it was traffic last time round for Joblin, who has now seen his gap go as low as it has been since Den made that spin. And indeed, everybody else came in for a drive-through penalty. I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, Cheverton, Munro and Swaggersgale all had drive-throughs, or was it just the 2 Cadillacs? But it's certainly...
No, we had 3 for sure. I just can't necessarily... I'm pretty sure you're right. I think Cheverton there as well. We definitely saw Swaggersgale, who's no time registered in qualifying, gave him an incredibly difficult day's racing ahead of him, putting him all the way at the very back of the grid, not just back of class, at the very back of the grid, and then having to serve a drive-through, which we haven't had confirmation from race control yet, but we're speculating at this stage, Ewan, that it's actually just positioning ourselves incorrectly at the start procedure, or possibly effectively jump starting when before the green light.
I think for Swaggersgale especially, there was a few people out of position further back there. We saw that it was 3 wide, almost as the waving earlier on. So he got forward Patrick Den here into the chicane. This, I think, is how he ended up slightly off the road through the right and the left, just up on that inside curb a little bit, trying to get on the power a bit too early. And yeah, as you were saying, following the driver off pretty much there. And he goes around the outside through Stabilo and negotiates the traffic quite well. But it is very, very easy to do.
I really love the camera angle looking down, rear facing down Radion, but I wish it was about a metre lower in real terms, because you would really see how the cars are getting airborne going over that crest. It's a dramatic angle, and it's a really nice position they found there for the camera work. I'm pretty impressed at this stage, Ewan. I'm enjoying this.
Yep, looks good. As we close the opening event, if you like, run by Motorsport UK Esports here on Le Mans Ultimate. So it is only the opening event, so still plenty more to come after the Spa 300 kilometres. And as we're going to show you a little bit later on, plenty to come from Motorsport UK Esports as well in 2025. We'll talk about that after the race. Haven't seen much of GT3 in the last few moments, but it's been a pretty good race for Nigel. It looks like going to be the victor on this occasion, just over a minute's gap. And again, after qualifying, wasn't expecting to see the McLaren so far in front of the rest, that's for sure.
No, he's really stitched this race together very, very nicely indeed. And of course, there will only be one first Le Mans Ultimate winner in Motorsport UK. Per class, of course, but that's a little bit of bragging rights. That's something to put on your profile.
Certainly is. I hope that tyre indication there on his dashboard isn't the one he's getting at the moment, because they are on fire. 4 tyres red there. I'm sure that's not quite.
They've got zeros next to them as well. So I think he's broken the mercury on the thermometer temperatures yet there from what he can see. I love an interactive dash as well. So yeah, especially as a commentator, if you get really close to your monitor, sometimes you can see a little bit of information there in terms of that normally would only be on the telemetry. So it's always good to get those tiny details right. But yeah, loving to see these 3 leaders certainly extracting so much out of these cars in this very, very early stage online broadcasting we're doing.
A great attention to detail as well, by the way. I don't know if you noticed at the top of the screen on board there was a map of Spa, which I presume a track map, which I suppose changes whichever circuit you're racing at.
Exactly, yeah. So many sims just pick one, don't they? And it's usually Le Mans that they have inside the car, and you always think, oh, you just put a different sticker on. But no, you're right, absolutely. Yeah, track map on the car as well. Just what they want. I don't know if there's any chalk markings or names or anything. Driver mascots that they might put in the car as well. But getting very close, too close for comfort, really, for our leader.
That's to Chris Humphries in the 70, who is alongside. He's now 3 laps down as William Stevenson comes up to the back of them here, and he's gonna, whoa, careful. He's just pulls to the right-hand side there as Humphries goes off right in front of him. Get away with it, though, and they will continue to negotiate the GT3. Stevenson will continue to try and get past them through No Name Corner now. So much more speed through these corners for the LMP2s, and they're more powerful as well. There you go, straight through on the inside line. Stevenson cruising at the moment, and he's competing effectively with Narkle to have the biggest win today.
Yes, that's the challenge, isn't it? Definitely, but a heart-in-mouth moment there for Stevenson. You see a driver to your left off track, and you do wonder whether they're going to be able to rejoin and not suddenly T-bone you. Yeah, hairy moment for him with 3 minutes on the clock.
I wonder where the leader is in terms of taking the white flag here for Nigel Joplin. It's very close, actually, in terms of whether he's going to be able to do one more after this, but I think this could be last lap shown next time. Sim is quite good at telling you when it is going to be the last lap. It doesn't often surprise you with the checkered flag at the end, unless it is really close, I suppose, in which case it's impossible to tell. But I think with just over 2 minutes and a half to go, it should be the win for Joplin, especially now because Den has gone off the road, or at least has gone for a short spin there. And suddenly, look at the gap balloon there to 16.5 seconds.
Indeed. Well, yeah, if Joplin was at risk of relaxing, that's probably gone up now for a bit. He's comfortable, obviously, at 15.9 seconds between the two of them. And just confirming there, top of screen, class leaders are Joplin, Stevenson and Nackler. And we were talking about Stevenson and Nackler possibly comparing gaps to second position and maybe comparing the amount of laps they've put on their opposition. This was Den's moment, then fully out on the gravel. Did that compound into a further spin? It absolutely did. He's getting used to holding these cars, but now he's had a moment at pre-start.
Big spin down there as the leader comes over the line with exactly 100 seconds to go. And just one more time around then for Nigel Joplin, who looks like he's going to take race victory here at Spa. It's been a good controlled race from him. Took the lead pretty early on, off the start of this race. It was a good battle between Joplin, Den and Cheverton on the run up the hill through here for the first time on the way towards Le Combe as well. Den went for a very near spin with Cheverton moving up to second, and after that Joplin just pulled further and further away, and you can't even see his rivals in the rearview mirror there down the Kemmel Straight.
No, it's as comfortable as it gets, and hopefully he can rein in the ambition to try and get fastest lap as well on this final tour. But he's got enough wiggle room to really push for it, and we are on board the BMW of Nigel Joblin, leading our field and of course class by extension. Several flies have suffered their demise on his windscreen throughout the course of this 300 kilometers, he's not tempted to put the wipers on and clear those off just yet. I don't think it's quite got enough washer fluid ready to smear those those fly remains, and we'll enjoy this final lap as he's still pushing hard, which is great to see.
Yeah, he'll be low on fuel now. Car will be feeling nice. Car will be feeling light on its feet, and he will be bringing it home for a race victory. This is very realistic, by the way that dirt is picked up on the screen, but you can get the tear off, of course. Get some clear vision of time now. Officially does elapse. An hour and a half of racing here at Spa comes to a close in the Spa 300 kilometres. The first ever race on Le Mans Ultimate run by Motorsport UK Esports. And the Spa 300 kilometres is going to go to Nigel Joblin, who has controlled this race from the very first lap. When he took the race lead, he weaves himself over the line and in the BMW takes victory here on Le Mans Ultimate, and he's very, very pleased with it as well. Why not? Good, fantastic drive from Nigel Joblin here tonight to take victory ahead of Patrick Den. Further behind, we're going to have to wait some time until William Stevenson and Sammy Joe Narkle take their class victories as well, as they compete for the biggest win in their respective classes.
Absolutely, Narkle is on his way. Of course, fewer laps, but finishing behind Joblin on the tick over to the 90-minute point. And here then is Stevenson, just coasting the car home, really, I think, at this point in the United Autosports Team USA number 23, LMP2. A good day's racing, I think. I think he'll be happy with this.
Certainly, yeah, and he'll be wondering, I suppose, as we all will be, what would have happened if Ethan Faulkner had remained in the race for a little bit longer. Fortunately, technical problems saw him retire pretty early on, but William Stevenson has controlled this race ever since then, and his winning margin's actually going to be credited with a lap, as I think Nigel is as well. Stevenson over the line, flashes the lights, and in LMP2 he will be the Spa 300 kilometres winner. Congratulations to him. That was a good drive and a consistent, considered effort from him tonight, as it is as well for Nigel. Into the final couple of corners, one of the Cadillacs just in behind. A last little taste of traffic maybe. Oh no, the Cadillac's just going to back off and let the McLaren have its victory moment here into the final bus stop chicane. Sammy Joe Nigel has controlled this GT3 race right from the very beginning. It was a good qualifying. Seen off the competition pretty early on and then just brought it home after that as well. Spa 300 kilometres in GT3 goes to Sammy Joe Nigel.
Yeah, a little congratulatory flash of the lights there, and he's pitching it all the way around. And clearly, post checkered flag, you do get to have a little bit of fun in Le Mans Ultimate. And I'm sold. If you can do donuts at the end of the race, I'm sold.
Absolutely, that is fantastic to see. And just turn down the traction control, especially in these cars. Just do those donuts around. He's only managed one. So there you go. He's back to pit lane. Not sure whether we get results in this game yet or not, but anyway, we've seen everybody almost over the line as they continue on at the moment on the Warblown lap. We do indeed get proper results. Oh, this is from qualifying. So there you go. You can see the results from qualifying a few moments ago, and you see how Nigel Joblin was not the quickest, and indeed wasn't throughout the race as well, but he was indeed at the end of the day the race winner by 13.9 seconds ahead of Patrick Den, with Matt Cheverton on the podium. Luca Monroe and James Magersgale round out the hypercar field in the two Cadillacs ahead of William Stevenson, who wins in LMP2 ahead of Adam Locke. Rhys Town ended up a lap down on Stevenson in the end as Sammy Joe Nigel took the win in the McLaren. Peter Shuttleworth ended up getting shuffled down, but he did finish the race at least. He got himself back onto the circuit in 10th position. further on down, the rest of the GT free field was completed with Alistair Ramsey and Jaden Chew on the podium. Peter Tong was outside of that podium place in the McLaren, along with Chris Humphries. Jeremy Jekyll unfortunately retired after that pit stop, in which he couldn't exit the pit lane from. Ethan Faulkner DNF'd as well pretty early on with a technical, and Luna Franks unfortunately disqualified on that run up towards the start-finish line as they got themselves underway. Let's have a chat to the race winner, Nigel Joblin, who can now join us. Nigel, welcome in to the broadcast booth. Can you hear us? And can we hear you as well? I'm not entirely sure. We can't at the moment. Good evening. Can you hear us? Doesn't sound like it at the moment. I can see him trying to...
yeah, so he's on his way. Out. He's on his way, and he's muted right now. So hopefully we will hear from Nigel.
It's the most awkward part of online broadcasting. Just waiting for someone to get their mic to work, which can be a bit of a problem, a bit of an ordeal.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Good evening. Hello, we can hear you now. Congratulations on the win. Tell us a little bit about how the race was for you.
Interesting. I had absolutely no game sound at all the whole race, so I was driving mute the whole time. I don't know. I was having all sorts of technical issues and everything at the start of the race. So, hey, that's one way to win the race.
Well, how did you end up passing for the lead then so early on in the race? If you had problems, because it was a very lively start that ended up with you in the lead.
I don't really know. I think what his name now? Guy in P1 had a bit of a rough start going out of T1, and I sort of took the opportunity, got a little bit ahead of him, going into the. Going in, and I just sort of took it, wasn't backing out, and then just decided to drive away. So, yeah.
Someone mentioning in the Discord chat there that they were surprised you were slower than them in qualifying. Patrick Dent saying he was surprised you were slower than him in qualifying. Did anything go wrong in the session particularly?
I think I was more focused on trying to fix my game sound. Yeah. So I think that definitely sort of took my focus away. But I know also doing practice and quality, I wasn't too fast. So I was just sort of going to be relying on my race pace, really.
Well, congratulations on the win here tonight. Thanks very much for coming to have a chat with us, and hopefully we'll see you at another event very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Nigel Joblin there, the winner here tonight in the Spa 300 kilometres. William Stevenson won in LMP2, so we'll get to him next before the other hypercar drivers. Good evening, Will. Thanks very much for coming to have a chat with us. Can we hear you, and can you hear us? He's still muted at the moment, so I'm going to guess no for now, because yes, that's the way of things. It seems tonight. So we'll get to him later, because we're waiting. They're waiting for us. Others are waiting for us down in the booth, including Luca Monroe as well. I wonder whether the people don't have the permissions to talk in here or something. It's going a bit wrong so far. Luca Monroe now joining us, but he's muted straight away as well. Maybe people don't have the permissions to talk to us. Oh, maybe now they do. Luca, can you hear us? No. Never mind. It's not going well.
Having a seance experience at the moment here.
Yeah, but it's a great time.
Yes, indeed. Smaggerscale is also on the way, but we'll see if there's a push to talk. Is there? Luca, can you? Not for us, no. But maybe the native settings for the specific drivers concerned. I think Luca has given up for now. We're going to see back in.
No, maybe not. Well,
I was just wondering how awkward can we make this?
Oh, we could be here for hours. Never mind. Let's give James a go, and then we'll if not, then we'll sack it all off, because this is disastrous. James, can you hear us? Can we hear you? More importantly, no. Well,
on mute at the moment. Yeah, we'll give it. Here we go.
Hello?
Let's try.
Oh, we've got somebody. Can you believe it?
Hey.
Welcome. Tell us a little bit about about your race first of all, before we get into the game and everything else.
Not much happened, to be fair. I got a drive-through on the start for God knows what. This is literally like the first time I've ever touched this game.
Wow.
Coming over from iRacing, I was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll hop on LMU and give it a go, see what it's about. And it was quite fun. But yeah, I just popped myself around in last place for half an hour. Or 90 minutes.
Was lap 1 particularly interesting for you, starting at the very back of the grid? How did you navigate lap 1?
Do you know what? Surprisingly well. I thought it would be a lot more carnage than it actually ended up being, considering I had to pass the whole GT3 field. But no, it was actually a gazy thing. I think I got past like almost all of the field, all the GT3s by turn 1 anyway. So
wow, nice.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Well, you weren't alone with the drive-through penalty. That at least 2 others had to suffer it. We were speculating maybe it was about going before the green light, or maybe there was just some positioning situation that wasn't quite in line. But as you say, your first time actually on track with the sim. Yeah, I think you did a great job to get home.
Yeah, no, absolutely no clue what I got it for. Yeah, no, Matthew Sheverton's one of my teammates, so I mean, I was in a call with him, so he was saying that he got one as well, and we don't know we didn't even know we had a drive-through, because yeah, I don't know, I know so little about this game that I didn't even know what the little red box under my mirror meant until my spotter comes over the radio going, "Oh, you got to serve it this lap, otherwise you're going to get disqualified." I'm like, "Oh, right, I guess I have a drive-through then." So yeah, but other than that, it was a pretty fun race. Pretty uneventful. I was catching Luca at one point on the softs, but I think mediums were the shout in LMDH at least, especially to like the second half of the fuel tank. The softs just like fell off, even though it said we were on like 70%. Yeah, it was falling off.
Well, yeah, all right. Well, thanks very much for coming to have a chat with us. It's good to see you out here. Hopefully, we'll see you in another LMU event soon. But for now, congratulations on getting to the end, and we'll see you again at some point soon.
Yeah, see you later. We got there in the end.
Yeah,
in a bit.
Goodness me. James Schwager's girl there, the Cadillac driver you can see on the screen there, finishing down in 5th place. We'll chat to Will Stevenson at least before we wrap up here in a few minutes' time. Will, welcome in. Good to have you with us finally. Congratulations on winning in LMP2 tonight. How was that for you?
Pretty good, to be fair. Just kept it consistent, didn't have any unfortunate game crashes, and managed to keep it on the straight and narrow.
Exactly. It was a very close qualifying session though between you and Ethan Faulkner. What do you think the race would have been like if he had been there? I guess a close one probably.
Yeah, I was slightly disappointed that it happened, because suddenly I think he was about 9/10 behind me on lap 2 and then just disappeared from view. So I'm sure it would have been a close race. So it's a shame that happened. But
what are your thoughts on the game initially and how the car's feeling?
I mean, I'm a fan of the way the LMP2s feel. I'm not as much of a fan as the GT3s and the LMHs, but the LMP2 feels fairly planted. You can kind of throw it around and it still sticks. But there's definitely things to iron out with the game.
Certainly, as expected, I suppose. No, thanks so much for coming to have a chat with us. Will, congratulations on the win in LMP2 tonight, and hopefully, again, we'll see you at another LMU event soon.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, William Stevenson there, the winner in LMP2. Let's try again with Luca Monroe, who I think has got things sorted out. We've got this channel sorted out. We've got it in order.
Yes, hello.
Chat to people. Hey, good afternoon. What was your race like, and how are you finding LMU so far?
Well, I don't know if you could tell at the start there. I didn't know if the car was on or not, and I went to turn it on and I turned it off, and then I was quite a fair bit back from the guy directly ahead of me. And then I tried to catch back up, and then it says, "Oh no, you're driving erratically here, have a penalty." So I don't think I'm going to be coming back to LMU anytime soon, frankly.
Well, I mean, it's at least you've worked that out from this. I did notice there was quite a lot of people who were having problems with the penalties early on. You certainly weren't the only one. But in terms of actual driving, how was the Cadillac in terms of compared to the others you've driven, if you have?
Well, I can definitely, because I am a Motorsport UK Esports champion in the Cadillac in the Prototype Challenge LMDH AM class, so I think I'm quite qualified to have an opinion about the way it's driving. And I'll be honest with you, I felt the car plenty of times just sort of really going light, and I had sort of no feel to it. It almost felt like it was taken off. Maybe that's my bitterly uninformed opinion, and LMU purists are going to come with pitchforks to my house now. But point being is that I'm just not getting on with the game. But look, it's great that Motorsport UK esports are branching out. I'm looking forward to committing to as many of these events as possible. I'm looking forward to the GT Challenge in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, I love how you got that little champion
humble
thing
brag.
in there. Yeah, very humble brag. That was very good. I enjoyed that. And yeah, is this game been out long enough for there to be purists? I don't know. Anyway.
I was thinking the same. Yes.
I mean, plenty of people have carried over from R Factor 2. So yeah,
this is true. But we're early days still, very much so. No, thanks very much for coming to have a chat with us, enlightening bit on how it's feeling out there, and hopefully, as you say, we'll see you at another LMU event soon.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Luke and Monroe there in the top 5 here tonight. That's just about all the interviews we're going to have a chance to go through, otherwise we'll be interviewing the whole field here today. One thing before we go to tell you about is the 2025 calendar for Motorsport UK Esports, which has now been announced right the way, starting from here, which is the first event pretty much of 2025, right the way to the 24-hour endurance race right at the very end of the year in December, which we've done for the last few years now. So the next one up is the iRacing GT Challenge, Motorsport UK GT Challenge, which will be starting on the 25th of February, 3 weeks' time, and going over 5 rounds of British and 1 non-British circuit through Donington Park, Snetterton, Spa, Silverstone, and Brands Hatch. So I very much hope you can join us for that as well here on Motorsport UK Esports. And it's been great to be alongside you for this event. Thoroughly enjoyed our first little look at Le Mans Ultimate.
Definitely, yes. It's been a really enlightening time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed being in the comms box with you, Ewan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully we can come back to Le Mans Ultimate again at some point soon. Big thanks to everyone who's been tuned in over the course of the evening. It's been great to have you along. I've been Neil O'Leary alongside Andy Webster with Hugo Lewis behind the cameras. Until we see you at another Le Mans Ultimate event soon, or indeed the start of the 2025 Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge, it's goodbye for now.